I am the absolute biggest fan of the Mishima family parenting style. I mean, creating an entire global tournament just to have a valid excuse to beat the shit out of your son you threw into a volcano for pure ego? That's peak life goals right there. But despite the chaotic family drama that defines the Tekken series, what really captured my soul was something else. For a game released in 1997, Tekken 3 still feels strangely modern. Not because of the graphics, not because of the gameplay, but because it understood something most fighting games didn't. Before 1997, your average fighting game was filled with traditional kimonos, fantasy armor, or generic martial arts tropes. Tekken 3 looked directly at the concrete streets. It looked at the kids hanging out at the arcades, skateparks, and underground clubs. It infused that exact same DNA into its world. And that's why nearly 3 decades later, it still feels timeless. So let's talk about the drip, because the fashion in Tekken 3 was a serious cultural shift. Namco didn't just dress these characters to look cool, they looked at the real-world subcultures from the late 90s and integrated their raw, street energy directly into the game. Take King for example. His primary wrestling gear is peak color blocking, a design choice that actually hides a brilliant gameplay secret, which we'll get into in a minute. For now, just look how it works. Classic purple tights with prominent gold-orange accent, deep blue trunks, and aggressive yellow high-leg boots. It's pure combat sports. But it's his Player 2 casual outfit that we all love that truly bridges the gap to the concrete. It drops the wrestling gear entirely for a deep blue t-shirt and loose, dark navy sweatpants, giving a unique edge with a distinctive snow leopard pattern trim running down the sides, paired with those classic black and white training sneakers. It perfectly captured the robust, heavy, soul athletic aesthetic that was blowing up in the mid-90s hip-hop and sneakerhead culture. Jin Kazama in his primary combat look featured those iconic black karate pants with the aggressive red and yellow flames blazing along the leg, a visual representation of his traditional martial arts roots. But it is his alternative urban outfit that brings the real flavor of Tokyo's underground. At first it might look like a simple athletic tracksuit, but is actually a direct nod to the 90s Japanese Yankee and Busazuka delinquent culture. In a hyper-conformist Japan, where society demanded every teenager fall in line to become a corporate worker, these motorcycle gangs and school delinquents were a symbol of pure anti-establishment rebellion. They customized their bikes, caused chaos in the streets, and wore exaggerated modified uniforms to reject the predictable future forced upon them. By wrapping their new poster boy in the literal uniform of Japanese street rebellion, Namco proved they weren't just looking at global trends, but capturing the raw, untamed energy of their own local youth culture. And this design philosophy bled into the entire roster actually. You could see in Huarong's biker-inspired leather vests, Dina Williams' tactical military chic, or Forrest Law modern spin on traditional tracksuits. No one was safe from the streets. The street attitude was not just a marketing coincidence. Look at the early concept art the team was producing behind the scenes. One official sketch shows Jin Kazama with a cigarette hanging from his mouth, looking less like a traditional fighting game hero and more like a rebellious manga delinquent. His hair is unkempt, his gaze is cynical, and a cigarette alone completely shatters the clean, disciplined image of a traditional martial artist. This raw and refined edge carried over to the rest of the roster too. Look at this early concept for Huarong. In the final game, his goggles are neatly holding his bright hair back, giving him a stylized, polished, almost anime look. But in this rough sketch, the goggles are dropped heavily around his neck, leaving his long, dark hair to fall messy right across his face. It doesn't look like a martial arts rival. He looks like a tired, dangerous bad boy straight out of an underground 90s club. These weren't finalized designs, but it shows how the developers weren't imagining a clean, heroic world. They were actively experimenting with delinquents, smokers, and outcasts that felt pulled directly from a contemporary youth counterculture. Even though many of these rougher details never made it to the final PlayStation version, they exposed the core mindset behind the Tekken 3 aesthetic. The team wasn't looking towards tradition, they were looking towards the streets. None of this iconism happened by accident. The developers at Namco adopted a strict design philosophy, where every single character needed a silhouette, and its clothing elements so distinctive that even a child could draw them from memory. To achieve this, they rely heavily on a technique called color blocking. Color blocking is a fashion and design method where you take loud, contrasting colors from opposite sides of the color wheel and pair them together in a solid clean blocks. There are no messy patterns or subtle gradients here, just raw, high-contrast visual friction. This is exactly why Tekken 3 outfits look so striking. Think about the aggressive contrast of Jin's sharp red against deep black, or Huarong's striking blue clashing against vibrant yellow. They use these massive patches of solid color along with exaggerated accessories to make the character pop instantly on screen, even when crushed by low polygon counts of the original PlayStation hardware. But this philosophy wasn't just about making the characters look cool on a magazine cover, it directly impacted how the game felt to play. In a lightning-fast 3D fighter, your brain needs to process visual information in fractions of seconds. By using aggressive color blocking, the developers ensure maximum visual readability. Even on a blurry 90s CRT screen, and in the dead center of a chaotic high-damage combo, your eyes instantly recognize exactly what Jin or Hwoarang are doing. You know which leg is kicking, which sides they are facing, and where the hitbox is. The fashion design was actively working to make the gameplay smoother. To understand how radical these design choices truly were, we have to look at the brutal technical limitations the team was fighting against back in the late 90s. If you dig through old Japanese archival documentaries from Namco, you can actually see the developers sitting in front of massive CRT monitors, painstakingly rigging and animating these characters node by node in early 3D software like Maya. In this era, physics didn't exist. The original PlayStation hardware couldn't handle complex, flowing clothing. If you gave a character a long, realistic coat or loose, unconstrained fabric, the polygons would glitch, clip through limbs, or completely tank the game's frame rate. Every single triangle on screen was a luxury. This is where the genius of Namco's fashion choices saved the engineering team. Instead of fighting the limitations, they leaned into the stiffness of the hardware. By giving Jin a structured, short tokufoku jacket with heavy boots, or giving Eddie Gordo's tight, geometric sportswear, they created outfits that looked incredibly stylistic but moved rigidly within PS1's processing limits. They didn't need millions of polygons to simulate fabric physiques, because the bold shapes of the street clothing did all the heavy lifting for the viewer's eyes. It was the ultimate synergy between technical survival and late 90s urban identity. This brilliant mix of street fashion and smart design gave Tekken 3 an edge that its competitors simply couldn't touch. If you look at Virtua Fighter, the undisputed king of the arcades at the time, the approach was completely different. Sega's game was rigid, traditional, and heavily focused on the pure, disciplined culture of martial arts. It looked and felt like a high-budget karate game. Tekken 3, on the other hand, injected pure rebellion into the genre, by wrapping Jin in baggy skater pants or giving Eddie Gordo that stylized capoeira drip. Namco brought the arcade closer to an MTV music video, kinda. It was not just like a martial arts game anymore, it was an icon to the late 90s youth culture. When you look back at 1997, the shift in presentation did something radical. It completely changed what it felt like to step up to an arcade cabinet. Before Tekken 3, fighting games felt like isolated digital arenas. You put your coin in, you fought, and you left. But Namco's heavy reliance on late 90s subculture turned the game into a lifestyle transmission. The loud industrial breakbeats, shaking the cabinet speakers, didn't just loop in the background. They set the tempo for the entire room. When you pair that aggressive audio with Jin's anti-establishment posture or Eddie's high-energy sportswear, the game stopped looking like a traditional software and started feeling like a playable musical video. Trends die, but freestyle is immortal. What made Tekken 3 so unique was its absolute authenticity. It didn't mimic youth culture for a quick sales boost. It was youth culture. It captured a very specific, beautiful anomaly in time, the transitional time between the analog and digital worlds, where counterculture was defined by the music you blasted and the heavy soul shoes you actually wore to the arcade. When the nostalgia industry tries to replicate the 90s today, they usually lean into cheap cliches like neon vaporwave or bright geometric patterns. But if you want to know what the late 90s actually felt like, the grit, the attitude, and the raw friction of the concrete, you don't look at history textbooks, You look at the stance of a pixelated Jin Kazama wearing a structured bike jacket on a blurry CRT monitor. Namco didn't just build a video game, they built a digital time capsule that refused to age. Thank you so much for watching this far. If you enjoyed this aesthetic analysis, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more.